So I has a brew. I also have a bag of popcorn because the kids are watching Santa Claus 2, I think. Now popcorn, I requested some. I've also got some M&Ms and some minstrels. Oh, actually, this is quite nice. Coffee popcorn, this is. Actually, it tastes like salted caramel, but I'm not too sure. I apologise about the lack of any actual content, but basically I've been looking for work, I've been going to interviews, I've been doing this, that and the other, and I want to give you a bit of background to that, and I'm going to go into it in depth, and possibly in a beer time later on, but I'm not too sure. I might decide that later. It's going to be sort of maybe the day after this goes up, but I'm not too sure. So basically, my contract ends on 31st of December. I've been offered, my place of work's offered me another 6-month post up in Plymouth, which means I've got to relocate again. And the short along of it is, I've told them to shove it up their arse, because I'm not going down the route of going through more, you know, I've already relocated down Cornwall for them. They're not going to provide me with a permanent contract, so they can shove it up their arse, because I'm just not interested. So that happened. I had 2 interviews this week, both were a waste of time. One in Bristol for a company called WPC Software. I'm going to mention these companies because I'm sorry, I'm starting to get really pissed off with things like this now. So, a company called WPC Software, really great bunch of guys. So, yeah, the interview went really great. Their pathetic excuse for not giving me the job was I'd be too bored in the role, and they reckoned that I would, because I've got too much experience, I'd be too bored and this, that, and the other. I'm going to probably say that's a bullshit excuse. I reckon that probably there's other reasons around that, but again, I'll probably talk about that in a beer time, in a ranty beer time. Then there was a shitty job up in London. I'm definitely going to mention this company because they're a bunch of cunts, and I recommend if anybody ever comes to you from a company called Plan-Net, I might put their link in the description below. I'm not too sure, but a company called Plan-Net, and they are an outsourcing, a third-party like outsourcing service desk company, and they were going to pay me a pathetic wage. I think it was 24k a year. They wanted me to do 50 support calls a day, and they wanted me to do this, that, and the other thing, and I just basically told them no. Also, the interview went well, and I think they probably would have given me the job. But the guy, it was one of the guys that was on the interview panel. Well, one of them looked like Raz off of the phone shop. Off of a phone shop even. And the other guy was a guy called Ian who looked like, well, they both had like you know, let's ignore the appearances for a minute. The guy called Ian, he was just a wanker, right? He was condescending. He looked down at me. Some of the questions he was asking were just really patronising, and I was just, you know, like, do you know what? I've spent decent time and money to get up to London, and if you're not going to be professional and decent about it, then you can shove it up your arse. And then when Mrs. rang me back, was it yesterday, I basically said words to that effect. I said, no, I'm not going to take the dog. And she said, oh, would you like to withdraw your application? I said, yes. And as soon as I said that, she said bye and put the phone down straight away. So, I have to say, I'm starting to get a bit ticked off with the recruiters and people headhunting me now, because I get that a lot. And, yeah, there'll be some, either the pay will be shit, or there'll be some. And, you know, I'm quite happy to take a pay cut to what I'm currently on, but I'm not a ridiculous pay cut. I'm certainly not going to, go off and earn 24k in the City of London when most service desk jobs in London are 35k a year or more. Actually, there's a couple of government jobs at the moment that are going at 35 to 38, which is actually a lot more than I'd expect. But I'd expect at least 28 to 30,000 is the minimum I'd expect to have in London. So I was a bit pissed off with that. I had a leaving do yesterday for the guys up at the guys that actually work in Plymouth, which is where the main area of it all is. I might eventually tell you where I did work for and slag them off really majorly, but I'm thinking, well, for a start, there's probably some legal ramifications there, and secondly, it's not going to help me in terms of finding work, so it's probably not a good idea. So yeah, at the moment, I'm really pissed off. I'm just really annoyed. I have a sneaking suspicion, in January I'm going to be in exactly the same boat. Well, I mean, I'm going to be able to get temporary work. That's not going to be difficult. I can go through agency. That's fine. But I'm going to have all these jobs and these interviews coming up that'll either say I'm overqualified or I'm not qualified enough, because that happens all the time. I'm either overqualified to do the shitty jobs like retail and all this other kind of stuff, because actually I could go in as manager's level and take most of those people's jobs. Not being arrogant, but I could. Or secondly, it's a technical job, and actually they want you to have ridiculous amounts of Active Directory experience and this, that, and the other thing, which I don't have. So there we go. That's my life so far. I'm actually drinking festive chai tea. I was going to wear my festive jumper, which has got like a carrot on it and stuff. It's got a snowman with a 3D carrot and a 3D scarf, but it smells of like old women because I wore it yesterday, and also it's quite hot in here, so I couldn't. I thought, well, I shan't actually roast to death in it. I'm just going to wear my Paisley Enigma tea for a minute and kind of go from there. So let's go on to some actual news before I bore you to death with my depressing life as it currently is. Well, not quite depressing. It's just annoying. I don't get depressed. I get stressed a little bit. Depends on what it is. But anyway, so researchers have make Bittorrent anonymous and impossible to shut down, apparently. So they've created a program to basically allow you to use a kind of like a Tor network, but not quite. It's like a private Tor network. So if you use a bit like seeding. So with BitTorrent you can seed and you can do all this other kind of stuff. It's the same with the client. So within the client you can seed Tor traffic, so you can essentially be an exit node for Tor, and also download the stuff as well. Obviously the only downside to this is that when you've got end-to-end encryption, which is fantastic, but the downside to it is you then end up with a big overhead in terms of extra data you've got to download because it's encrypted, and you've also got to run Tor as well. So if you're limited by how much gigabytes you use a month, then that might be a bit shit. But that's quite a cool thing. I say I noticed that was on Torrent Freak. That looks really quite cool. Obviously links all in the description below as usual. Now this was quite interesting. Google Apps brings family get together was a blog title that Microsoft put out by one of their senior VPs, I think, within Office 365. And they basically slagged off Google's Google Drive and all this other kind of stuff, and said that their bonehead of a son was shit, and he was doing the sign language, and he was doing this, that, and the other thing, and he was looking to take a VW across America and actually drop out of college and all this other crap. So anyway, it's a really interesting article. Well, it's quite a funny article, and it's worth reading, and I'll obviously put all the gubbins down below. But no, I thought it was quite funny because Microsoft, like Office 365, came out of Google Docs. Google Docs was the reason Office 365 exists. Without Office 365, without Google Docs, you wouldn't have had Office 365 because Microsoft had to create something to compete with it. Basically, the short and long of the article is that he reckons that Google Drive, although it's free, doesn't quite do what it needs to, and this, that, and the other, and apparently they somehow managed to bond over Google Drive or Google Docs versus Office 365 because his school uses Google Docs and he hates it or something like that. But it's, I don't know, it was free, but it doesn't quite do what you want it to do, and all this other rubbish. So I thought it was, I mean, it was typical Microsoft because they do this all the time. They'll have executives, they'll make some stupid comment about something that's just bullshit mostly, and it'll, you know, all the enterprise people will be like, oh yeah, you know, and actually, you know, this is typical Microsoft mentality. You know, I hoped that when Steve Ballmer left and Bill Gates had gone, they came out of that and they've got a fantastic CEO now, so why the fuck are they still going down this route of, you know, bullying their competitors? It doesn't work, because all it makes you look like is it makes you look like a fucking idiot, and which is what Microsoft are actually looking like at the moment. Office 365, yes, is great, but you can't really compare the two to Google Drive. Google Docs came along first, and it was the first cloud service that offered, you know, essentially a proper cloud service. So it offered things like documents for free, with obviously the background being that they sell you data, which is fine. I mean, it's all anonymized anyway, and actually works reasonably well. It doesn't work as well as Office 365, and it certainly doesn't work as well as a standalone version of Office 2013, for instance. But it allows you to create temporary documents. You probably couldn't write a dissertation on it. Yeah, I mean, you might be able to, but you know, you're going to be able to write, you know, maybe a letter in it or something like that, and certainly maybe Excel CSV values you can put into a Google Docs thing, and also it means you can share it and you can do all these funky things as well. So it's quite cool. But no, it was quite an interesting. Well, it's an interesting read because it's just typical Microsoft shit that they do, and it's quite interesting. The blog has actually since been deleted, but you can still see it. There's a PDF thing I'll link in the description below, and also there's an IMG PNG you can also grab as well if you're really interested in it. Now here's some bad bit of news for customers of EE, of which I'm not going to be one for much longer. BT in talks to buy EE for £12.5 billion. So BT had to sell off BT Cellnet and create O2 ages and ages ago to settle a big debt they had, and because BT doesn't have any mobile space and can't bundle mobile with data and TV and phone and all that kind of stuff like Virgin Media can and like EE can now, and even things like Tesco's. You know, they're struggling. So they wanted, so as opposed to just doing what a lot of people do, which is just kind of creating a new network called BT something and then just kind of piggybacking on the back of O2 or piggybacking off the back of EE or piggybacking off the back of 3 or something. They're creating, well, they're going to buy out EE, and that's going to be then part of their entire package. Now, EE is a shit company, and as soon as my contract's up, I'm not going to go with EE again. Their data limits are abysmal, they're crap. I mean, I was lucky when Phones for You still existed, that's when I got my contract, and in that contract I had unlimited data. You can tether it, you can do whatever you want with it, there's no limitation on it, there's no fair use, there's no nothing. So I've got unlimited internet, which is great. But if I wanted to get 4G, I think you know, unless you want to pay stupid amounts for it, even like the top end is still 30 gigs. You can't actually download that much through 4G. And even their, you know, HSDPA 3.5G packages still have a cap now of about 3 gig, which is ridiculous. You know, we live in a world where data is big, and for me, I'm a power user. I need Twitter, I need this, I need that, I need the other thing, I need videos, I need pictures. So for me, you know, 3 gigs. I mean, I could quite easily rack up 3 gigs in a month. If I go to London, like EGX was ridiculous. I think I racked up about 11 gig maybe. You know, by the time I uploaded a video, and by the time I did this, that, and the other thing, you know, I need data, and I'm quite willing to pay for it. I know I might have to pay 30 quid a month. That's fine. They don't even give me that option. Also, the customer service is abysmal. You know, silly things like when VAT went down, they didn't reduce my bill, and when VAT went back up again, they increased my bill, and I wrote a letter of complaint, and I said, look, get your shit together, because that's not fair, and then they sorted it all out. But, you know, they're just shit. Same with Vodafone. Vodafone are crap. I've never known them to be so. Vodafone are incompetent, their customer service is rubbish, their network's great, but that's about it. And equally, BT are also crap. Their customer service is rubbish, their infrastructure isn't that great. I mean, yeah, they're rolling out super fast broadband, and you can get fibre to the premise via BT, but because their customer service is crap, then it's just going to make the company even worse than it already is. And so yeah, it's not going to be good. It's going through Ofcom at the moment and anti-competition and all other kind of stuff. So we'll have to see the outcome of that. You know, I don't know. I don't see how BT can get away with that, because that would then just create. I mean, I don't really ever get how these big buyouts can ever happen, because it's anti-competition. They're supposed to be, well, what used to be in monopolies and whatever commission to make sure that big companies couldn't own everything. But then you've got likes of Google, Amazon, and all these other companies that have, and Mugshot, that have ownership of all these other smaller companies, and then they roll it into their own technology, which is fine, but then you end up with no competition between all of them. Same with Apple and stuff like that as well. So the other thing that's happened is mobile phone firms have agreed to a £5 billion deal with the government to improve coverage. So there's actually an official government article about it as well, which is quite good. But basically, there was talk of essentially having a national roaming service whereby no matter what mast was owned by who, you could connect to it. So if you were an EE customer, you could connect to Vodafone mast, O2 mast, everybody's masts, and therefore you'd have better coverage, and everybody would be sharing exactly the same infrastructure, and therefore the only difference between, you know, the different networks would be cost, and would be things like how much data you could get and things like that. And it would be good for everybody, because it would mean that therefore these dead spots that a lot of, you know, EE for instance around here is shit, but Vodafone is great. So it would mean everybody was on, you know, pretty much the same service, which would be fantastic. But instead, because the mobile phone companies didn't want this to happen, because they were, I don't know, they just don't want it to happen. They think it's going to be an anti-competition measure and this, that, and the other thing. And they're also claiming there's going to be more congestion on some masts where there's less coverage, because everybody's going to be connecting to that mast, and therefore throughput's going to be less for everybody. And So instead, the government and mobile phone companies have come up with an idea to increase coverage for everything. So, you know, Vodafone are going to increase their coverage, EE is going to increase their coverage, and O2 is also going to increase their coverage across the UK, obviously, as well as 3 and some of the other smaller ones that mostly actually piggyback off of other mobile phone infrastructures anyway. But hopefully that means it's going to be best for everybody, so that's actually not too bad. The MPAA are deciding to be cunts again, even though they're supposed to. The whole idea of the MPAA is to increase free speech and creative license and all that other kind of stuff. Yet what they're trying to do is they're trying to pretty much ban the internet, is essentially what they're doing, which actually helps to do that. The MPAA are both I think they're the most hypocritical people ever in the history of just anything, especially considering they're like an advocate for artists and stuff like that. So Google published a really great Blogspot article ages ago anyway, and then they've updated it since, but after a load of things have come out. So the MPAA have attempted to revive SOPA. It's changed names so often, but it's Stop Online Piracy Act is SOPA. They've tried to do that to a state attorney general, and there's been a subpoena that's come out and all sorts of other stuff that come out, and Google turned around and said, you know what, we're going to sue the arse off of you. So they're suing an attorney general because he's illegally going through, well, he's using subpoenas when he doesn't need to. He's doing all sorts of illegal stuff, and Google don't like it. And Google is actually taking the honest fight to the MPAA. So the MPAA are using the government to their own means and are trying to push through SOPA again. I don't really see why. The only reason they'd want to do it is basically because they want to get more money, and that's it. You know, granted, you know, the idea is, yeah, you protect online, you know, you protect copyright rights, and you protect people's right to own something and things like that. The trouble is, what they seem to forget, what a lot of lawyers seem to forget, what a lot of politicians seem to forget, is actually, you know, if you actually look at the research that's been done, actually there's a key piece of research that came out in Australia not long ago. There's bits of research that's been done in the past about those that pirate content. The reason they're doing it isn't because of it being free. I mean, yeah, there's a certain percentage of that, certainly within the younger generation of people, but it's because the content delivery systems aren't there. Like, yeah, okay, Netflix exists, but it doesn't give you the best quality for a start. You know, it gives you a reduced bitrate version of the film. You can't watch it on any device you want. You can't watch it offline. And, you know, so there's things like that. There's other things like, you know, DVDs and Blu-rays. When you actually go and buy those DVDs and Blu-rays, we've got loads of adverts on it. Like, I didn't pay for that shit. I paid for the actual film. So I don't want to have to sit through warnings and all this other crap, and FBI warnings and MPAA warnings and bullshit adverts about what the upcoming films are that I can't skip. That's why a lot of times, you know, I own films, but actually I torrent it as well, because it means I can just get the film without any of the bullshit in front of it. It's, you know, sometimes better quality, depends on what, and if you've got a Blu-ray, it certainly isn't better quality. It's better quality to watch the Blu-ray and use maybe any DVD to get rid of all the shit you don't need. And sometimes that doesn't work because, you know, the encryption keeps increasing. It's just like, if you sorted your shit out, people wouldn't pirate stuff. I mean, you would still have a certain level of piracy, but you wouldn't have as much as there is at the moment. And if you actually look at the research, those that pirate content are more likely to spend money on media than those that don't pirate content, in actual fact, by quite a bit. I think it works out at £7 a day or something silly. It's £7 a week. I think the average is something. It's a lot higher. I can't remember the actual figures. I did a thing about this ages ago, and those that pirate content spend more money on media than those that don't, which, you know, just goes to show that actually piracy is good for things, because actually pirates do like giving back to artists. It's just, you know, the MPAA lose sight of that, and even the British Phonographic Institute, whatever, the BPI over here, they're exactly the same. You know, they're too worried about the shortcoming earnings that they may lose, but actually they don't lose because people still pull back in. You know, they still buy the content, and you know, that's what they're worried about. And you know, it pisses me off because they haven't got a fucking clue what they're doing, and it's just ugh. So yeah, so Google are using, you know, rekindling the fight against SOPA, which is really good, because we need big companies to get on board with it, because if they don't, then, you know, we can't fight that ourselves. I mean, you look at the work that the Freedom of the Internet, whatever it's called, organisation are doing. I think it's FF. I can't remember the organisation now. In terms of net neutrality, you know, we've got some big companies involved as well. But, you know, they've petitioned the FCC, and they don't really seem to give a shit, because apparently, even though the FCC work for the public, it seems to be the lobbying companies seem to have more clout than those you know, members of the public that are essentially paying the wages of the people at the top and are voted in by the people at the top. So it's like, I think you know, we're coming to, hopefully, we're coming to an area whereby public speech and public opinion is actually swaying what governments do. Because we had a lot of corruption in the past, we still do, but hopefully that's now slowly coming back around to the people, which will be good. So this is where, like, communism doesn't really work, and I don't really like communism, but communism would be a good way to go in terms of a lot of this stuff, you know, redistribution of wealth, all that other kind of stuff. You know, I'm quite a big advocate of a lot of the stuff that Russell Brand was saying, even though he's a bit of an arse. But anyway, that's sort of going off a point. That might be a rant for another day. And there's a few other things I wanted to mention which don't actually tie into any real news articles because it's kind of common knowledge. But spam accounts have been deleted on Instagram, which is really good because it means that Instagram have now getting rid of all the shit, which is really fantastic. And I think Twitter needs to do the same. And Facebook, well, Facebook is not really quite the same because I don't think we really get so much spam on there. It's mostly spam from your own friends for bullshit games I don't play, which is why I hate Facebook. Like, Facebook for me is just people I know in real life, which I hate. And you know, I wish I wasn't friends with, and then people on Twitter are people from all around the world, which I was friends with in real life. So it's kind of like, you know, that sort of contrast between the two. And I think Twitter, the founder of Twitter, somebody or other, I can't remember who it was slagging off Instagram. I know because one of the reporters said, oh, you know, Instagram has got X number of followers or X number of users, and he said it's not about users, it's about the content, it's about this, that, and the other thing. And it's about the fact that Twitter actually is better than Instagram, better than Facebook, because it actually makes news. And if there's a breaking news story, people don't go to Facebook, they don't go to Instagram. Well, they might go to Instagram for some photos, maybe, possibly. But they go to Twitter. People tweet it. You know, that's where breaking news comes from. The Apple workers being treated like shit is apparently a new thing again. BBC Panorama did an investigative report on it, and Apple are completely denying it and saying that no, this is all a lie. The thing is, this isn't just Apple doing it, this is everybody doing it. This is probably Asus, for instance. This is an Asus tablet. Some components in here will definitely be made in a sweatshop. They'll be made by companies like Foxconn and things like that. They're nasty to their employees, and that's just the way that Chinese labour market works. If you don't like it, don't go out and buy electronics, don't go and buy actually most things at all. That's just the way it is, and there's not really much you can do about it unless you buy things that are all made in the UK, or all made in America, or all made in Europe, or something like that. Like every single part, you know, every single component, from the motherboard to the capacitors, the resistors, to the, you know, the screen, everything. If it's made in the UK, or if it's made in, you know, somewhere in the Western world, then you can't, you know, that's the only way you can really guarantee. And even then, the metals they use are still being, you know, smelted by slavery and stuff like that, and so it's really difficult to actually police. And you know, and you all want cheap shit, so you know, what do you expect? It's not a lie. It's always been common knowledge for ages, but people just, you know, because people are stupid, they don't realise it goes on. So that's that. North Korea hack on Sony. I wanted to just mention this in passing. I mean, this is a big news story that everybody knows about. In actual fact, you know, originally when this broke, I was thinking, I wonder whether this is a viral marketing campaign. And a lot of people actually said that afterwards as well. Which, you know, is really, really bad. But actually, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. You look at Alex from Target, that probably was a viral marketing campaign. Because who else was it that did it before? Somebody else did it before. They made somebody famous. It wasn't famous. It might have been some other big company. It might have been something like, not Krispy Kreme, but, you know, Costco or something like that. You know, and it wouldn't surprise me that these big companies would plant some viral news story like that. But the FBI's got involved, so it's kind of less likely it's actually going to be viral marketing now. And it does look like a state-sponsored, essentially terrorism. I guess I would call it terrorism, and it's not really terrorism because you're not terrorising anybody, although you are making bomb threats against theatres. Now, I'm going to give a bit of background as to what's currently happening now, and the latest and greatest from that, at least since on Saturday the 20th of December, which is that Sony has every intention of releasing that film on video on demand, on digital sales and stuff like that. At the moment, so the reason they cancelled the December release, or at least the Christmas release, is because most of the big US cinema or theatres decided not to show the film because of the threats and because of this, that and the other. So because of that, Sony said, well, there's no point in us trying to release it on the 25th because no one's going to show it. It's only going to be the small cinemas, it's only going to be those that are willing to go out. So they're now deciding, you know, well, obviously they've revoked that 25th of December thing. Now there's an update that's just come out literally today. Well, obviously Barack Obama had a bit of something to say, and the FBI had something to say. Barack Obama said we're not going to be bullied by fascists and things like that. You know, we're not going to be bullied by free speech and, you know, all these other kinds of things. And so therefore, Sony doing what they've done is not really the great way to go. Sony have turned around and said, well, actually, it's nothing to do with us. It's to do with the cinemas. And their plan is to release it on video-on-demand services, and they do say that, you know, they're going to try and get it into many people's homes as possible. Because obviously this is to do with, I think it was called The Interview, I think it was, about the attempted assassination attempt on Kim Jong-sing or whatever the hell he's called, the National in North Korea. So that's all happened. And at the moment, apparently, they're having problems with trying to get it on video on demand because no one actually wants to show it on video on demand. So Netflix doesn't want to, Amazon Video doesn't want to either. The funny thing is, though, Sony own PlayStation. They own the PlayStation Network. They own the PlayStation Store. Why the hell they don't release it through that, I do not know. I don't understand why they don't do that. They've also got the Xperia lineup. They've also got stores through that. They can sell Sony content through that. So why the hell, if that's what they really want to do, why won't they do that? I don't believe that North Korea has the startup capital, the tenacity, or the resources to attack the West from, you know, from a terrorism standpoint. I don't think it would work. I don't think, you know, if you've got the likes of ISIS that have got lots of money, the likes of the Taliban that have got lots of money, even American money, and, you know, our guns, UK guns, British guns, American guns, American ammunition, from both theft and actually being given to them in the 80s and things, then if they can't bloody do it, and if they can't get over to these places and blow shit up, then what makes you think the Koreans can do it? I think there's a lot to be said for just going all-out war with them. Now, I know war is awful and nasty and horrible. Now, why people don't, I do not know. It might be because there's sheer numbers of people, and if they did, the Chinese might get involved. And if the Chinese get involved, we could be up the Swanee, because the Chinese army is huge. Their army is pathetically trained and not very well equipped, but there's lots of them, and so therefore, you know, we might have lots of problems there. Also, we've still got Russia being a pain in the ass, so we kind of don't really want to go to war with North Korea if the Russians are still kicking off. But I think the entire world would be against North Korea, even the Chinese, because the Chinese have, you know, they've not been as politically ingrained with North Korea as they used to be, especially since they're, you know, the way we're going with nuclear weapons and things like that. Well, their attempt to go down the nuclear weapon route, although I don't actually believe they have any nuclear weapons, because I don't think they've got that they've got enough money, or they've got enough skills to be able to do it. So I think, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for going to war with them and just annihilating them. Not for the people of North Korea, but certainly, you know, ousting out the powers and getting people back into a civilized democratic society and reintegrating it with South Korea. You know, because you're going to have the Japanese, maybe the Chinese, the Americans, us, South Africa, Australia, the New Zealanders, although there's not very many of them. You know, in terms of even everybody in Europe, so the French, the Germans, the Austrians, the Swedes, the Norwegians, possibly the Russians, we don't know, they probably wouldn't get involved. Canada, all those other kind of big, huge military forces in the world would get together and they would pretty much annihilate North Korea, because it's not got that many people, and those that are in the army, that doesn't equate to very much. Yeah, there will be big casualties on each side, but I think it probably would, you know, of all the wars we could get involved with that we shouldn't have been involved with in the past, like the Iraq War, like the Afghanistan War, that is a perfect one where actually we could use our resources for good. And yeah, so I mean, I don't condone war. Sometimes I don't think it's a viable way to go. But there's nothing else you can do with North Korea, because you can't sanction them in terms of finances, because they have their own finances. They print their own money, and it doesn't really, you can't do anything because they're so far removed from everything. They're not part of any international banking effort. They don't have any trade with anybody. Nobody trades with them. So you kind of like, well, you know, what do they can't. They haven't got any resources to splash about, and there's nothing we can do to stop resources going into there, because they don't have any resources going in the first place. So yeah, anyway, that's just sort of a thing I wanted to just mention. And yeah, I mean, I quite fancy watching the film now. I didn't even realise it was going to exist until this whole thing happened. So in terms of PR and marketing, North Korea have done a great job of making people want to watch the film. So, you know, if North Korea just left it, then not very many people would be wanting to watch the film. Whereas now, if it comes out on a video-on-demand service, or if it comes out on physical media, people are going to go out and buy it and going to watch it, because they're intrigued. They want to know what it's about. I'm surprised the same thing didn't happen when Captain America, was it Team America, came out, because that was obviously a big piss take for North Korea. And Yeah, it was really bizarre. Like, I'm surprised that didn't kick off the North Koreans. Maybe it did, but maybe they didn't quite have the distribution networks, and a lot more people within the country wouldn't see it. I don't know. It's difficult. I think, you know, I've got a lot of time. I think for this, I haven't seen a few documentaries about North Korea, both the bullshit Vice one and there was another one. I've got a lot of time for the North Korean people and how, you know, how they integrate within the whole thing. I still don't know why the hell they don't all just uprise and have a big revolution. Probably because they're in a state of fear. But there's a lot to be said for the North Korean people, not so much the actual leadership team at all. I think, you know, Kim Jong-sing and all that other kind of crap, and the soldiers are all a bunch of, you know, wankers, and they're just nasty, horrible people. But there we go. Yes, I think that's pretty much it. So there might be a beer time after this. I'm not too sure. I might just have a rant about work and things and stuff like that, because it's entertaining. It's what some of you guys want, so I might just do that. But I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure when the next one will be, because essentially when I finish work, I won't have any way of uploading things fast, so I might have to downgrade it to 8 megabits a second and 720p, and it might take me like an entire day to upload. So we'll have to see how things pan out. I'm hoping I get a proper job in, well, reasonably soon, but obviously there's no guarantee of that. So we'll have to see how everything pans out and kind of go from there. And yes, so apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video.